like I said, we can flub, so we're recording, but you can flub, you can
Yeah.
say and all, and we can redirect if we need to.
Okay.
So, but go ahead and state your name and what you do.
So my name is Kai Bishop, and my career has been in ministry. So pastoring churches, a variety of positions in ministry, in churches. For the last 15 years, I was the staff chaplain for an oil and gas company. So it's a unique position, unique company. Had about 6,000 employees, so I was their spiritual leader, basically. Monday morning devotional, Wednesday midweek prayer, and just kept up with the employees concerning their personal lives, and added value in that way to their lives. So back in May, an investment company bought that company, and they laid me off, and so now I started my own chaplaincy service. So many chaplain services are for they're for crisis management within a company, and mine is built on relation. So it's a relational chaplaincy. So my concept is to go in and build relationships with your people, and when there are crises, then there's a known individual there to help them, counsel them, befriend them, be with them during that period of time, or to just live life with them. You know, if it could be a celebration, it could be whatever's going on in their life, a wedding, a funeral, whatever it is, just to be there for them and be that resource for them.
What is your perspective? What is your gift to people who need help?
Well, I think it is relational. You know, I'm non-judgmental concerning any situation. I've been doing ministry for about 35 years or more. And so I often tell people, your story is not going to offend me. It's not going to surprise me. It's not going to shock me. So tell me your story, and be as blunt and as picturesque as you want to in telling me your story, because I want to help you. And so being able to have a conversation with someone and then take a walk around their situation and poke at it from different angles and different perspectives, and then give them something different to look at. You know, when you're in the middle of a crisis or a situation, relational, physical, mental, emotional, you tend to only focus on the what's in front of you at that moment, and you are so self-focused that you don't have an opportunity to take a walk around. So having somebody that you trust, who's not going to share your information with anyone else, who's just going to try and assist you. I think that's what I bring to the table many times, is just a conversation. And that could be, you know, in an office, that could be over lunch, that could be over a beer. Whatever you choose, whatever venue you choose, just where you're the most comfortable.
What are the problems people bring to you most?
Mostly they're relational, I think, you know, and having, you know, I deal with a lot of, it seems like I dealt with a lot of younger men, and still do, who are navigating marriage and children and trying to build their careers. And so helping them to balance that, that aspect of their lives. So that's what I deal mostly with. But then there are also the people that are dealing with grief, emotional trauma over the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a relationship, or some other job loss, whatever. So helping them to kind of navigate that particular area as well. So those are probably the two major things.
Are there some fundamental practices or advice that you give people when they're in those situations?
You know, I think that
What's the fundamental answer?
I don't know that there is a pat answer for any situation. And I try not to look at it as a textbook. Okay, I'm just going to apply these things that I've told everyone else, because I look at you as an individual, and your story, your life, the way in which you approach life is different than anyone else's. So I try to take an individualistic approach to handling whatever situation you're going through, and not try to apply old ideas and old concepts to your particular life. So I like to look at it from an individualistic And so the advice is usually, I would almost say, standardized in that, okay, we have to, you can't sit and, you can't curl up in the fetal position and just moan away your life. You're going to have to get up and let's move. Let's figure this out together. But you have somebody helping people to know that they have somebody with them in the fight, whether that either that's by prayer or by counseling or by coaching or whatever they choose to call it. But a friend, being that friend for them, building that relationship with them is an important factor, I think, in navigating whatever situation and whomever it is.
What is an old idea and what's a new idea? You have an example of when you really helped change someone's life in that regard?
I think because my career has been ever evolving from a religious or spiritual standpoint, I might have, there's a tendency, I think, to just grab a scripture and say, just do this, apply it to your life, and everything's going to be great. And so the older I've gotten, the more I have avoided just grabbing a scripture and using it as a pat answer for someone. And instead saying, this is, in my opinion, what the Bible says. It doesn't waver, and it is solid, and it's truth, and it's valuable. Yet, just rubbing it on like a salve is not the answer. You have to actually, work with it and apply it daily and think through the process. So there may have been pat answers in the beginning of my career as a pastor, but as I have navigated that, I've looked at people's lives and where they've come from, and tried to be much more individualistic about the approach I take with individuals.
From what foundation do you get your strength?
My as a pastor, that's where I've always counseled from.
Sure.
And
as from personal, let's say, personal experience,
mm-hmm.
What were the times where you had to manifest strength,
mm-hmm.
resolve, resilience, where you had to struggle through something to find the other side?
Yeah, I'll share my story when we have our talk on October 14th. But I was born in adversity, and so I was born into a family that was, the textbook dysfunctional. A father that was married 4 times and a mother that was married 7 times. Father was Native American, mother was Irish, and so all of those, the stereotypical attributes associated with Native American and with Irish, the passionate, the given to heavy drinking, living, less than being adults. That was the environment that I was born into. And so I quickly, at a young age, had to become an adult because nobody else was taking care of business. That means cooking, cleaning, taking care of business. And so I learned from a very young age to step up. And you could not say to you where that tenacity came from. Early on, I would say I followed Christ as a believer and found solace in faith because there was so much dysfunction at home. I was there in the church setting or with people of faith, and I found comfort in that place. And it wasn't an attachment to a church, and it wasn't an attachment to people. It was an attachment to God. And so I would say that that's where it came from. Even if I didn't understand it or didn't know what it was, that's where the strength came from and the wisdom came from to understand things at a very young age. So, then dealing with a dysfunctional family, you think you grow up and you go away from them. Well, that doesn't happen. You still want interaction, you still want relationship, and you do your best to build that, even though it's not reciprocated. And so it's just been a lifetime of learning to navigate different challenges and different conflicts and different levels of adversity and levels of rejection. And so I can't say that there's one thing, but I think that my younger years was a place that set me on a foundation for understanding how to deal with those things, even if I didn't understand what I understood. So that makes sense.
Rejection and betrayal are two of the hardest parts about the beliefs that we have about ourselves that are beset upon us by our parents.
Yeah.
How did that carry out into your adult life? Did it, or had you already processed it before you became an adult?
Yeah, I think that as I said, I really didn't have what I would call a traditional childhood where I could be a child. Yeah, I did fun things. I was given permission to do that and participate in school, but there was always a pretense. I had to pretend that my family was like everyone else's family, and I had to put a pretty face forward. And so I was the straight A student, and I was the disciplined athlete in whatever sport I chose to play. And I was the yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am guy. I was, very respectful. And so when that was not the norm in my household, and so, or even the expectation. That's kind of where the foundation came from, and I'm not sure I'm answering your question. So.
Yeah. Well, so you took responsibility early.
Yeah, I took responsibility early for my life, and wow.
Roughly.
So I can tell you that I remember being 4 or 5 years old, and there being no one in the house. People had gone off to work or whatever, and having to take care of my sister, my sister and I. So that meant, we had to figure out what we're going to eat. We had to figure out, how we were going to behave in the house if there was no one else around. So it was about a very young age that the pattern was set, and it wasn't. This is not a story that makes me a victim. It's a story that makes me a victor. It's a story that is not belittling my parents. They did the best they could, I feel. They probably could have done better, yes. But they were, for whatever reason, incapable of assuming an adult role. They were busy being teenagers or children or whatever. And so somebody had to be the adult. And so it began at a very young age. Remember learning to drive when I was about 12. And that's with a pickup and a trailer with 4 horses in it, because I didn't want to be the victim of a drunk driver, my father. So I would drive. When he would be too intoxicated to drive, move over, I got this. And so that meant down the highway, that meant anywhere. So learning those things that other people have to take time to learn, it was an instantaneous education for me. Cooking, clean, all of those things.
Yeah. Was your father always passive about those things, or did you have to fight him for those things?
He was pretty much, and I don't know if it was the alcohol that he even remembered half the time. He was this sounds counterintuitive to most people. He was a good father. He was a good provider, but he just was prone to drinking too much, always. And so he would be at every sports event. He would be at every play. He would be at every school event, but he would always show up intoxicated. And so then that's when the pretense took place. I had to put on a pretty face. I had to pretend that, no, he wasn't. And so I lost my train of thought on that one.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So he showed up.
Yeah, he was there.
So you had to cover for him.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I had to be the guy that I just didn't want people to know what it was really like at home.
Okay. Why? For you or for him or
for all of us? For all of us. Yeah, I just because we were different than the rest of our community, in that my father being Native American, we were different. And even though there was no racism, I don't remember any of that. But I just knew that we were different. I didn't know anyone else who came from a divorced family or broken family. They were all, they appeared on the outside to be just normal families, so taking care of business. And so I felt as though for image that I needed to be something more, that we needed to be something more. We needed to be like them. And if we weren't like them, then we were bad.
Sounds like you loved him.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you started taking responsibility for the household at, we'll say 5, when did dysfunctional and this isn't right start entering your head or your vocabulary?
So I mentioned that my father was married 4 times. So it was the people that he invited into our life that I think brought about the dysfunction. They were harsh. They were abusive. They were, a variety of things. Anything you could think of associated with a child that is not cared for well. That's the things that applied to those people that he brought into our household. My mother was just in and out, and she, I said she was married 7 times. So, and the people that she was involved with were just like that as well. She didn't invite people into her life that were tremendously stable, and so, and that really had any care or concern for her children. It was, people that are misbehaving and not acting maturely tend to gravitate toward people who are misbehaving and not acting maturely. So it was that type of people. I cannot recall there being any strong examples of people that stepped up to say, hey, what's going on in your life, in my whole career or my whole life as a child. Even church-wise, church is supposed to be pretty and perfect, and I was there. Anytime the doors were open, it was a Methodist, it was a Baptist, it was a Church of Christ, it was a Catholic, it was whatever. Had no affiliation to any denomination. I just went where I thought, hey, this is where God is, and but I don't remember and recall anybody stepping up and saying, hey, let me know about you. And it was probably because I was pretending to be the perfect kid and have the perfect household. So,
describe your mother. Describe her, not what she did. Describe who she is.
Well, she left when I was 3, and so my father got custody of my sister and I. And so between 3 and, I don't know, somewhere, I knew of her. I didn't really know her. There would be an occasional Christmas present, or someone would say, hey, your mom's in town. And we would make every attempt to try and locate her. But she was pretty disengaged, honestly, from us. She had, I had an older brother from one of her previous marriages, and a younger brother, and she took care of them. But for my sister and I, there was no real connection except occasionally, and so I don't really know a lot about her. I knew her in her older years before she passed, and when I say that, I knew of her illness. I was there, went to visit her when she was sick with cancer, attended the funeral, those sorts of things, but not a real dynamic connection. So.
How'd your sister take it all?
My sister became just like them. She, chose to follow their lead and think that was the appropriate way to go. And so her life has been a mirror image of theirs, yes.
She's how many years older or younger?
She's younger. She's about a year younger, actually. Yeah.
Oh, you said take care of your sister. I assume she was younger. I
Yeah, yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah, about a year and a half, maybe, younger than I am.
So she had trouble attaching emotionally, trouble attaching to parents, and so that's
Yeah, she looked
so
for, so my father would marry and she would look for a mother in that individual, and that individual wasn't interested in mothering us. She had her own child. The next, same thing. She wasn't really interested in mothering us, but she had her own children. So there really was no strong female connection in my life growing up. So.
you know where your sister is now?
I do, yeah, and she's disabled because of her lifestyle, so mentally and physically disabled, and so.
What does she have, if you don't mind me asking?
Um,
Diagnoses, what does she take?
she takes a variety of medications for her mental health, but it was an automobile accident because of drug addiction, and so she had that accident, and then she moved in with my father, which was totally toxic. Um, and so I helped as much as I could to help them navigate that, and to be, it was sort of a codependent relationship. I think my father probably felt guilty about the way he hadn't participated when we were younger, and so it was total care. She was totally dependent upon him in every way, and so um, he contributed to her delinquency many times, I think.
As an adult?
As an adult, yeah, because she was living with him. So.
Okay. Where do they live?
Well, he's passed. She lives in Alvarado, Texas.
And I'm just trying to get context and proximity.
Sure, sure.
Okay, so when did he pass, and how did you?
It's 4 years ago he passed, and I became, I became, the older I got, I had this attitude probably. In order to not be like these people, I needed to distance myself from these people. And so when I married, we moved to St. Louis. So we grew up in Texas, but moved to St. Louis, and I pastored a church there for 20 years. And so the contact with my dad was limited. We would go to see him occasionally. He would come to see us occasionally. But in the 20 years, that was probably 4 times that we had any real connection with them. When we moved back to Texas, then the connection was a little bit more. And that was about 17 years ago. We moved back to Texas, and so I was a bit more involved in his life, helping him, calling him weekly. And he was older, of course, and struggling with some health issues, and so I wanted to be there for him. So.
How does your sister describe her childhood and your parents?
Um,
How does she talk about it?
she's a victim.
Okay. What does that sound like?
It sounds like blaming, a lot of blaming. You did this, you did that, and the unfortunate thing for her is that mentally she doesn't recall correctly some of the things that happened. It's her version over what I would call the real version. And so she can either romanticize, or she can fantasize, or she can she just tends to make herself the victim in just about every situation. You did this, you said that, so I don't have a lot of connection with her, simply because the phone call will be, you did this, you said that, and why didn't you? And it's like. I feel like I'm being counseled by you. Go ahead, though. I love it. I love it.
I do not avoid the hard.
Coach me.
Okay. So, at what point did the two of you start to diverge in your stories and your experiences?
When did
At what point did she start becoming a victim, and you not? And then when did you start noticing the difference, if ever?
I never perceived myself to be a victim. And so her, on the other hand, she was, she's more emotional for one thing. Not that I shy away from emotion and not afraid of it. That's not my go-to when it comes to
What's your go-to?
fixing, processing, thinking through, being realistic and optimistic about whatever the situation is, as opposed to being emotional about it. And then I can get emotional, if I process it long enough and think about it. But I find that if I give myself to be emotional, it's not really fixing the problem. And my goal is to fix the problem, the fixer, and so that's my go-to. But for her, she's always been, even as a younger, and rightly so. She was rejected often by the women in her life, and wanted desperately to have that. And so she would find someone that would show her the attention that she was seeking, and it was always.
Did she go for men and women?
No, just women. Just men. I'm sorry, just men. Yeah.
Okay, so how did your patterns of strength and fixing problems, how did that carry forward into your life and into your career?
Well, I believe that, of course, I said it set the foundation to where I had so many, I would call them pretty big, significant challenges in my younger years, to the point where the challenges that I've faced since then have seemed to pale in comparison to what I experienced as a child. And so I don't really see, if things are a 10, I see them as a 5 or a 4 or even less. And so I don't tend to see things inflated and probably deflate them to a point where it's unhealthy, maybe. I don't know. But still, I try to, as I said before, I try to think through a situation. For example, the losing of a job that I loved most recently, and the challenge of that. Instead of being bitter and angry and resentful and oh, woe is me, and being older, you think, wow, and people are saying to you, aren't you ready to retire? It's like, well, there's no retirement. And not being offended at their statement, but just thinking, no, that's not my life. That's not what has transpired in my personal life to where I could retire. So begin the process of thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? Clearly, if I'm going to stand on my faith, and the Bible says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope in a future. I would think that applies to me. And so I've trusted that that's the case, and have pursued then, okay, let's try this. I think I can do this on my own. Never had my own business, never started my own business. Have always been beholden to the other person to set my value. But then having to figure out all of that. And rather than saying, I can't, I won't, I don't, everything is I can, I will, I'll try, I'm going to pursue this, I'm not going to give up. Clearly, if I'm still here, God has a plan. So,
when you say make something a 10 that's a 5, what did you mean by that?
I meant
like you don't catastrophize?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought you meant.
Not making a catastrophe out of something.
Name an instant or an event or a moment, if you can, or just an example or an idea of when you would go one way and your sister would go a different way.
Yeah.
Can you describe? Because these are the points at which people's lives change.
Mm-hmm.
And you win or you lose. You fail.
Yeah.
Or you find success.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name a moment something and you noticed that your sister would make a different decision or not make a decision?
Yeah.
Anything like that?
I would say that I have always been a pretty confident individual. Um, and so rather than looking for validation from other people, I always thought that I probably had it figured out, no matter what age I was. I either had it figured out or I would figure it out. Whereas my sister would choose to look for validation from someone else and comfort from someone else or help from someone else. And I had the tendency to try and figure it out myself.
Who did you get help from? Because there's somebody, I know you said nobody asked you when you were growing up, hey, how are you doing?
Right.
What's going on? Can I help you with something? But somebody somewhere along the way asked that question, right?
Yes.
Who?
Probably.
Okay. Oh, not anyone you remember?
Well, I know that, I was always looking for people who I could just be normal and average and not have to be an adult, could be a kid or whatever with. And so it was probably after I graduated from high school, went to college, I joined a fraternity thinking that that was the answer to finding friendships and, all the rich people did this and I wasn't that. And so I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. Worked 3 jobs in order to go put myself through college, and then began to build relationships and friendships. Now, I would honestly say probably not the healthiest relationships when you're in a fraternity and you're all acting foolish and whatever. But I cared enough to not become like the people I was born into, to not go fully down the rabbit hole of living that lifestyle of frat guy lifestyle.
But
I found
exercise push a few boundaries, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was not perfect. I was not a perfect child in that particular area. Yeah, I experimented. Let's say, tested the waters.
Sure.
And quickly realized, okay, this is not who I am. This is not who I want to be, and so. But I would tell you that even though I didn't grow up in a religious environment, and yet I was always called by or felt comforted by or drawn to, let's say, faith and God, I felt called to ministry at a young age as well, which I didn't know what that was, didn't understand it, had no one explaining it to me. But I knew that, and I said no to it. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I even expressed at one point to my father, hey, this is what I think I want to do. And he was like, no, you don't. You're not going to do that. You're going to be a poor man. Religious people don't make money. You need to find a career where you're going to make a lot of money. And so rejected that. It was after I married that, and my wife grew up in the total opposite environment. And so it was in that environment that I probably began to experience love for the first time, and unconditional love, and affirmation of whatever. And so I explained to her, hey, this is what I think God's called me to. And that was after a year of resistance and me not having a job and us eating, canned food, that I finally said, hey, this is what God's told me to do. And I told him no, and she was like, okay, what the hell? You got to figure this out. Let's get it done. So it was immediately I signed up for seminary. It was after my undergraduate degree. Signed up for seminary, got a position at a university as their chaplain, and then was invited to be the student pastor at a church in Missouri, and stayed at that church for 20 years. So, and it was throughout that, I think, that probably some of my I began to grow mentally, physically, emotionally. Of course, marriage, my wife being from a great family, helped considerably. But the people that were a part of my life in that church really invested in me and my family as we began to grow. And you know, church is not a perfect place, and there are as many assholes in a church as there are anywhere else. And so, I'm sorry if you may have to edit out that.
It's like if I in my house, so I don't know about.
But there are, it's not perfect, and so you would encounter challenging personalities no matter where you go in church or out of church or whatever. And so, but I believe that my upbringing gave me the ability to navigate those things a little bit better, and to not, be so aggressive maybe, or as beaten down by some of that. So I feel like I'm rambling now. So
Please ramble. Please. No, the point is, what do you find? I may be coming too much from my own perspective of my own work, but I want to know if you have another perspective on this. What do you find is the difference between people who can solve problems and people who can't?
I believe, this is my opinion, I think that everyone has the same ability to solve problems that I have. I don't believe that God says, okay, you have more ability than you. Yeah, we've been given different gifts and talents, etc. But I believe that we have the ability to resolve issues and problems. It's, do we take advantage of those? Or have we come up with a whole set of standards and an internal conversation that says, I can't, I won't, I don't, and we thrive in that environment? Or do we thrive in the environment of, there are no lions, there are no wolves, there are no bears bigger than I am, and I'm going to be able to, I will take them down. I will fight this. And yeah, I totally embrace hardships as they come, understanding that they're inevitable. But I'm not going to cave into those hardships. And it's that type of person and personality, I think, that says, and one of the things that's different between the I can'ts and the I cans are the people that they involve themselves with, the people that they surround themselves with, and I call it a tribe. Who is your tribe, and who are those people, and are you a part of? Are you as invested in your tribe as they are invested in you, or do you have this expectation? Hey, I'm going to come to you when I need you, or whatever. No, it's reciprocal. I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to be a part, and we're going to do life together. And the hard thing for many people is that tribal members come and go at times, and some people are thrown off by the ones that come and go. And instead of embracing the new one that God probably brings in because it's some other valuable resource that you need, they reject them and go, well, it can't be a part of my clique. But the successful person will invite that in. And then they will celebrate those that move on to a different environment, as opposed to
Fight them and resent them.
Yes, exactly. Or reject them, ignore them.
People who don't grow hate people who do.
That's right. That's right.
I would have a lot of questions. You would have celebrated another birthday here if you answered all of them. Overall, so now you have a new challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So you got laid off in May.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges now, and how do you plan to, or what have you integrated, implemented? What opportunities have you taken, and how do you plan to move forward in this transitional part of your life?
Well, I immediately set out and got my own LLC and call it White Crow Consulting. White Crow is my native name. And so I set out to do that, and it's a chaplaincy service, and I call it a relational chaplaincy service. I set out to do that and begin to have conversations with people. Hey, what do you think about this? And it's people that I trust. It's people that are entrepreneurs, people that I had the privilege of encountering during my time at the oil and gas company. Friendships that I built, relationship, my tribe basically. And everyone says, hey, it's a great idea. And okay, I know it's a great idea, but can you give me some ideas as to how you can help me promote this? And have not surprisingly had a lot of people say, yeah, I'm going to help you. I'll help you figure this out. One of my tribe members owns a medical device sales company, and he says, I'll hire you right now. And so he was my first customer, and so our client, I don't even know what to call them. And so the valuation has been a challenge for me as well. I know what I need to make, and I would like to get back to somewhat of what I made prior to being laid off, but have had a difficult time in evaluating, because everyone else valuated me. It was a church, it was this company, whatever. I never had to say, hey, this is...
They gave you a price. Now you got to figure out what you're worth.
Yes. And so that's, and as I've negotiated it, as I've thought through it, that's a negotiable thing as well. So you have a company that has 20 employees. Let's talk about what that looks like. And let's talk about the value add for having this service provided for your company. I can tell you that having been at the oil and gas company for 15 years, it helped with retention, it helped with recruitment, it helped with morale, it helped with culture, it helped with volunteerism and philanthropic opportunities, because I did that as well. It built an atmosphere where people knew that they were valued, where they could leave their desk at any moment if they were going through a challenge and come to my office, and we would have a conversation. They could go back. Then they were much more productive, rather than sitting there fixated on whatever situation it was. So in my opinion, there's a tremendous amount of value. My question to people is, how much do you value your employees? And so what does that look like for you? Is it the price of a once a month conference that you would send an employee to, which is that $1,000? Is that what you would pay for a conference in another town? Or what does that look like for you? What can you afford? And so that's probably been one of my biggest challenges. And I would also add that I'm miserable at selling myself. I can sell you all day long and tell people how wonderful you are, but when it comes to promoting myself, I just stall out, basically. And so here's the thing. I have people in my life that will say, I'll sell you. You tell me when you're having a meeting, when you have someone that's tremendously interested in, I'll go with you. I haven't done that yet, because then I feel like I'm taking advantage of someone else, or I can't speak for myself, but because I am self-sufficient, and so but I'm not above it. So
yeah, it's tough asking for help.
Oh, absolutely.
It sucks. It sucks. What are your sons? What advice do your sons rely on you for?
They come to me for a variety of different things, and they know that whatever they bring to me, I'm not gonna blink an eye at. Honestly, I'm gonna go, okay, well, that happened. Now let's figure out how we not make it happen again, and how we move forward from it. So I'm not a reactionary when it comes to whatever their situations are. And so they come to me for a variety of different things, and mostly it's I would say it's along the spiritual lines. How would you handle this, or what have you thought about that? And I think I have a very dynamic relationship with my sons. It's not I'm going to only come to you in crisis. I'm going to come to you. Let's have lunch, and so it's that type of relationship. They have the same with my wife as well. I don't know what else. I feel like this has been a marathon. I feel like I need a nap after this. I've told you more about my life than I probably told anyone. So
I'm a coach. Like,
there you go.
You're not gonna. We're gonna. I make people face their demons.
Yeah, and I like that. I probably need that in my life.
It's the tough stuff. It's not all. It's not. You know, people abdicate responsibility.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what it's like. Oh, who has abdicated responsibility for you in your life, and then how have you abdicated responsibility for yourself?
yeah.
Because it's all a chain.
Mm-hmm.
If they abdicate responsibility, you're going to abdicate responsibility, and you're going to teach other people how to abdicate responsibility.
Yeah.
And when you take on responsibility, and I'm glad you said blame,
Mm-hmm.
blame other people for how you turn out, you'll never be any different than you are,
Yeah.
and you'll end up like your sister.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah.
So, anyway, you have to be able to work through problems. You have to learn how to resolve. And I'll bet when you were in church, and I'll bet when you were at that corporation, you encountered a lot of people who just didn't know how, who had never been taught how to be in the habit of solving problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, then they resist because they get emotional about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the barrier
Mm-hmm.
to understanding and the barrier to solving problems
Right.
is your emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you become emotionless.
Yeah.
It is that you learn how and when and who and what is worth using your emotions on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one of the things that people have to do, like many people I know do not and never have done, take a good hard look at who they are, how they hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
and how they abdicate responsibility. And alcohol, one of my mentors,
Mm-hmm.
says, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right? That's so easy. I was at Sammy Hagar a couple of weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, and it's not that if you're conscious of it,
Yeah.